Hello, everyone. Welcome to Adapting Literacy for Persons with Disabilities, Flap Your Hands, Sensory Story Times, and more. My name is Shaughnessy Miller, and I am the Assistant Marketing Manager at Lee& Low Books. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a white woman with brown hair and a ponytail and blue eyes. I am wearing a brown sweater and sitting in front of a blue and white striped wall. It's my pleasure to introduce our guests, Steve Asbell and Courtney Walker. Steve Asbell was diagnosed with autism and draws a comic strip called Stimmy Kitty that shares childhood experiences through an autistic lens. As a member of SCBWI, he won the Rising Kite Awards for illustrations. His debut picture book, Flap Your Hands, celebrates stims, the repetitive movements that provide focused stimulation to people on the autistic spectrum. And Courtney Walker is a former school librarian and the founder of Libraries for All. Libraries for All's mission is to educate, advocate, and innovate to create the most equitable literary and library experiences for readers with disabilities. Steve and Courtney, thank you for joining us to discuss adapting literacy for persons with disabilities. And we'll start with Steve. So, Flap Your Hands features four neurodivergent kids who face some stressful moments and use body movements called stims to self regulate their emotions. Can you share a bit more about stimming, what stimming is, and why you wanted to create a picture book about stimming?
Hi, I'm Steve. I am white, bearded, and balding with a blue shirt and wraparound dark sunglasses. Stimming is pretty much all sorts of repetitive regulatory movements, sounds, anything that an autistic like myself would do to um, honestly just regulate throughout the day, regulate senses, emotions. Um, and a lot of times it's just done subconsciously, and not really thought about. And I wanted to make a book so that way kids would not feel uncomfortable just doing what they do naturally.
I kind of laughed because, not because of what you said, but because when you said sometimes without even realizing it, I just have to say that I put some sensory items on my table to use later in the discussion. And I just noticed when you were talking, I had picked up one and I was
Yeah,
using it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it's exactly like that. So, yeah, I had mine right here.
yeah. Like I'm rubbing my thumb without even realizing it. It's
Yes.
usually if I were to be asked like if you're stimming right now, I'd say no, and then I'd stop and think. I could be tapping my teeth or tapping my um, thumb or whatever, or shoot, feet.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I didn't even realize I was doing it until you said that. So,
Yeah.
So, for Courtney, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and about Libraries for All?
hello, and thank you so much for having me. My name is Courtney Walker. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a white woman with straight brown hair and brown eyes, and I'm wearing a blue and white floral dress, and I'm sitting in my office in front of a blue floral mural. And Libraries for All, the mission is to educate, advocate, and innovate to create the most equitable library and literary experience for readers with disabilities. Um, like you mentioned, I'm a former librarian, and my whole life, my passions have been books and libraries and working with people with disabilities. And when I became a librarian, I was at a centralized campus for some of my district students with the highest level of support needs. And even though that was a passion of mine and something I felt really comfortable with, I found that in the library, I didn't feel like I had the resources or the training um, to really serve those students equitably. And so I just worked with my amazing special education teachers to learn as much as I could and to come up with ways to better serve these students. And this has led to this dream of being able to start Libraries for All, which is taking those ideas and that mission that I became so passionate about creating that equitable reading and library experience. And now I get to help and consult, help all types of levels and people within the literary world to just really work towards this mission of equitable access and inclusivity. And so I'm so thrilled to be here and be in this discussion, especially with Steve, who is really inspiring to me. And his book, Flop Your Hands, is one of my favorite books like ever. So I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. I know we're going to talk more about all of the wonderful things that you do through Libraries for All, starting with sensory story times. So can you explain a little bit more about what sensory story times are and what they look like?
Yes, definitely. So, I always make sure I'm giving credit to the amazing special education teachers that have helped me all along the way because everything I've learned and I did and I'm doing is because of things they've taught me or collaboration. And so, sensory story time, it's really based on including any kind of sensory connection to the library lesson, the story, or the book itself. So I saw in their classrooms that whatever they were doing, there was always a sensory element, whether it was something that the students were touching or songs or just anything. And so I brought that into library time. And sensory story times can look many different ways. It could be reading a story and then just having some sensory items. So like I said, I had some sensory things down here for examples. So if you were talking about something soft, you can find something just that you have in your closet. You don't have to spend money to create a sensory story time. So if you're talking about soft, you can have something. This is just some of that like pillow filler I had from adapting. I have some of these I bought, but some different sensory items. If you're talking about sand, if the story has sand in it, having sand for the readers to be able to feel. And along with free things that you can use, you can go on YouTube and find sounds or songs to connect. So it's really just finding any sensory connection. And the reason that is so important is because readers with disabilities often have different sensory deficits. So I had some students, and there's many, many readers that have different deficits, such as visual impairment. So if you think about the reading experience, whether you're reading by yourself or someone's reading to you, there's a visual element of seeing the illustrations if it's a picture book. There could be the auditory experience of hearing it read to you. There's also just I think the right description would be kind of like comprehending the comprehension of the story itself. And a lot of these readers may have deficits in one of these areas. And so what the sensory story time does is it adds in another element, it adds another sense and another way to connect with the story. And so it not only fills those deficits, but it also just creates a higher level of engagement. So students, even students, maybe their struggles or their deficits are, I don't think deficit was the right word, but maybe they have behavior struggles. So, or attention struggles. Like I have ADHD, so sometimes sitting and reading a book can be very hard. So the sensory element can just help engage the reader as well. So it can be something that you purchase, like I got these, or it can be something you find for free, like an animal sound if it's an animal book on YouTube or something sensory, or it can be an adapted book. Oops, pointed the wrong way. Adapted book, which I can share more about in just a little bit. And that has those sensory elements built into the story. So no matter who's reading it or where they're reading it, they have that sensory connection. And in my library, this just changed everything. I went from these classes, these students being equally served, as in they were in the library and they were checking out books, but this moved it into them being equitably served, as in they were truly getting an equitable library experience as all the other students, and an equitable reading experience in that they were able to take away and connect with the stories. in an equitable way. So, sensory story times are total game changers, and it just really ensures that all readers, no matter abilities, are able to enjoy and learn from and get the magic and power of reading. So, I love them, and I'm excited to share about it.
And I imagine this sensory story times are engaging and helpful to all readers, regardless of disability, not on the spectrum somewhere in there. I imagine anyone, it would increase engagement as
Yes,
well.
100%. In the process of creating this adapted area of my library, getting fidgets and creating, God, I keep pointing out, creating the adapted books and getting those different sensory items. Exactly. I found that all the students and even the staff members enjoyed them and benefited from them. And I could see that it just made such a big difference. Um, and I was even talking to Steve before about this, and Steve brought up so many other ideas I had never thought about. I don't know if you remember, Steve, but you were mentioning like so many other ways that like adapted books in particular, like there were so many other
Oh
group
yeah.
people you mentioned that they could benefit.
Oh yeah. Like even like elder care, like memory care, like you know, in like retirement communities or medical centers where they need that sensory input as well, and it might be helpful for them. It's also when I was doing a reading for a large group in a really noisy setting. There were autistic kids in the audience, but I noticed that everybody, regardless of neurotype, was really excited about the adapted book, for example, because they could touch the different elements, and because it wasn't saying just that it's just for neurodivergent kids to use, then everybody felt included, and nobody felt left out or made to feel different by enjoying the sensory story time. I mean, it wasn't a sensory story time, but the sensory elements of the story time.
Yeah.
So it was very exciting for everybody. And then if you're in honestly a quiet setting, then it's appealing for anybody, um, regardless of neurotype, because a lot of kids might just like a quiet setting. And instead of a really loud group with like 40 kids or so.
I love that you were talking about at that the sensory story time that you did with the adapted book, that everyone was interacting with it, because I was visualizing that all of the I think it was kids, all the kids, regardless or irregardless of their who they are, what, they were all
Yeah,
together experiencing a story time. And that's something that as I've been talking to people about adapted books, I've really had my eyes open to of I've always been so focused on serving these particular readers, like the readers with disabilities, that this amazing person that's been helping me on this journey, he was pointing out that he was excited for his kids, who were some of my former students, who were not in these classes, but to be in a library and to be able to experience libraries that were inclusive of all people, so he was like, the benefit of us all experiencing things together and seeing inclusive environments
yes,
is beneficial to really everyone. It's not just those who may have not been included before. It's everyone who gets to be a part of that inclusion and learn from,
exactly. And
yeah, being.
we have a lot to gain from being around people who are different from ourselves and our needs. When kids are separated, it's like they're missing out on each other's company and learning from each other and experiencing empathy for people who are unlike themselves.
Mhm.
So it's really nice when sensory story times can kind of include everybody, without pigeonholing them into, well, this is just for this type of kid, this is just for a different type of kid. Um, it and there might be kids who are more self-conscious who might not want a label, who might want to, who might have these needs, have these preferences. And a lot of times it, in their mind, it is more of a preference. Um, but when everybody's involved, then everybody's able to get that experience of one-on-one interaction, because a sensory story time will have less people, so you get a more meaningful interaction with each other too, like a different dynamic than you would in a large group.
Yes, that's so true. Those were my favorite. Well, I loved all my classes, but my favorite day, I called it the best day of the week, was my day when I had those smaller sensory story times with those classes coming in. And it was just, it made me really happy, like you're saying, to just have those more intimate connections with the readers. That's so true.
I know you've been referencing adapted books. I wonder if you want to talk a little bit more about what they are, how you came to create them, kind of what you use them for, just to explicitly share with people who might not know.
Yes, definitely. So, adapted books, I'm going to get my example. Of course, flap your hands. Like I said, when I was a librarian, and I was noticing that my library lessons, my library space, my library resources, including the books, just were not serving my students, all my students, in particular those with significant disabilities, equitably. Um, this was just really bothering me, and I was spending a lot of time in those classrooms just because it's those rooms give me joy. And I saw the teachers using adapted books, and adapted books are books that are laminated for durability, and they have different types of modifications. So in the classroom, they had different things like popsicle sticks to help practice turning pages, or they had particular curriculum goals of like a word that they were learning where they could move it around, and sensory elements added. And I saw that these readers were able to interact with books in a way that met their needs. So adapted books themselves, I did not come up with this idea. Amazing special education teachers and other people have been using these resources before. But what I came up with was creating a library collection. And so what I did and what I wanted to do was to take the popular and loved books that would be in a library collection and adapt those books. So the books in the special education classrooms were usually for curriculum purposes, which is very important, but I think we all know a library is a very different experience and important in a different way. The experience is not just the book, it's the going to the library, the checking it out, taking it home, and it's reading for joy and for, whatever purpose you want. And so I decided to make an adapted book collection for the library, and it just changed everything. It was incredible. And so what the adapted books are in the library, or is books that are traditionally published, and this is a little painful. For the first step is you have to cut them apart, but I always tell people it's worth it. So you cut the book apart and you laminate it, so you can see it's kind of shiny here. The lamination is a really important step because it makes it more durable. um, and then sensory items are added. And I've worked with authors like Amazing Steve have helped me, and different publishers, and gotten feedback on how to make sure these are still respectful to the artist and the authors, and of course copyright. And one of the most important things is that it's about enhancing it, not changing it. So whenever you are adding these elements, you can see that it is not changing the intention of the illustration, or the message or the words. It's enhancing what's already on the page. And it's adding sensory elements. So this one's a little difficult to see, that connect to the story. So I was mentioning earlier in sensory story times how having those sensory items already in the book ensures that no matter who's reading it, where they're reading it, they have a sensory connection to the story, and it just creates that incredibly accessible and equitable reading experience. Um, the durability is really important to me the lamination is really important because one thing that I experienced in my library was books were coming back ripped all the time, which did not upset me at all. Those can be fixed or replaced. Access to the literature was most important. But what really changed my view is when one of the families said, please don't send books home from the library anymore. We feel too bad about them coming back ripped. And I was like, okay, that's not, I have to fix this. They have to feel safe and comfortable having a book from the library. And Steve, if you don't mind me referencing, I'm going to see if you want to talk about it. This is something that Steve even really made me see the importance of even more the durability aspect, particularly talking about as you called it, stimmy hands, I think is what you've said. So if you wanted to talk about like the durability aspect at all, like you just showed me so much more of the
Yeah.
importance of that.
Well, first of all, what I especially like when you mentioned that kids would or parents would be worried about not having the book replaced at the library and not having that available. Something I don't think I mentioned yet is I'd also worry about like let's say kids getting in trouble for
Mm.
books getting ripped, and that guilt, the shame, the feeling that they internalize that they can't handle a book or that their motor difficulties, their hands that might be always moving, always stimming, that they feel like they might not be capable. And that's something that they take with them for the rest of their life, something that their parents might be insecure and feel shameful about. So I feel like for a library experience for them to go to the library and have a reading and not walk away with that negative feeling, walk away with a good feeling when they have, disabilities that prevent them from um, dealing with the book without damaging it. I feel like that's very, very important. And that they can, of course, have the memories of um, interacting with it that they can carry with them for the rest of their life, because that does cement that memory that would otherwise be forgotten as just another book. It helps them remember the people they were with at the time, the feeling of autonomy that they might have, where they might not be able to. I mean, honestly, experiencing reading a book does give you autonomy. It makes you feel um, like you're capable of reading it, that you are worthy of reading it. And if you have disabilities that prevent you from doing that without damaging it, then it 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 just leaves you with a bad feeling about books, and I feel like that's just something we can't have.
Right. And you know what you even made me think about is it also is ensuring that all of these readers get the information that's in the book. And I'm going to
Yes,
reference specifically Flap Your Hands because I've told Steve this before. Truly, this book really changed my life personally. This
thank you.
and my therapy of, working through the things that I struggle with. And I didn't even, I think I probably knew I had been stimming my whole life, like one that I do and has been a huge insecurity for me since literally I can remember at least in sixth grade, and it's still a little hard to talk about, but is I pick my head a lot. That's something I've done my whole life, and it's makes me
Me too.
very insecure. And so I have to, of course, also shout out my working in therapy, but it wasn't until it was through that, but also through reading this book and understanding. I knew what stimming was, of course, but like this is the difference. This word, this celebration, the word celebration is what changed it for me is um I was able to accept I am stimming, but then when I read Flop Your Hands, then I was able to um accept that not only is it okay, but it's good, and I should celebrate that it's something that's helping me. And so to go back to what I was saying is the information being accessible to all readers is important because books not only are for joy, but also for learning and information. And so if I hadn't had access or been able to read a book like this, I wouldn't have that information. And this book in particular, the message and the information is really important for these exact readers that might struggle to access books. And so this just being able to even access the information is so important. And of course, the joys. Steve.
If you don't mind me interrupting real quick, you mentioned the picking the head thing. That's actually one of the main reasons that I was motivated to write the book, because before I was diagnosed, um, my head was just it was bleeding a lot. It looked really bad. And when I found out that I might be autistic and looked into it and eventually got diagnosed, um, it was so liberating to know that, like, I'm picking my head because I'm repressing movements that I otherwise have been discouraged or punished for doing.
Yeah.
And so picking my head, something that I just naturally did, and then it was a harmful stem. And
Mm,
so I wanted kids to know that, like, there are things you can do that are okay. Like, I mean, isn't in the book, but like thumb sucking, for example, is something that a lot of times is less harmful than people would think. Um, and there's other things that are visible that should be less stigmatized, because they aren't harmful. They're not hurting anybody. They're not hurting yourself. Um, Meanwhile, repressing that and trying not to be have these visible behaviors is harmful, because then you end up grinding your teeth, you end up biting your nails, things that are socially acceptable to a point, but harmful in so many ways, not just physically. And so I wanted to make a book that made it clear that you could do these things, but there's nothing inherently wrong about them, that there's nothing to be embarrassed about.
thank you for sharing that.
So,
That made me emotional.
so yeah, I was in the same boat as you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Can I ask, Steve, the word celebration, because I think that's like one of just the most powerful parts of your book. Was that like something you were like really intentional about like wanting to include in the story?
Absolutely, because I feel like a lot of books explain away autism or explain stimming as something, um, and I feel like stimming is this, honestly, this almost, I know the word superpower gets used, like, oh, well, ADHD is a superpower, etc. But it's really kind of miraculous that there's this way to deal with anxiety, to cope with anxiety, with insecurities, um, overwhelm, that's just built in, like, or just excitement, like even like the positive feelings. A lot of times like, I was rocking more and more as I was getting more excited, and that helps me regulate my emotions, because even like a positive feeling like excitement can kind of bubble over, as the book says, and can, lead to shutdown or meltdown or even burnout,
Yeah.
if you don't have a physical way of dealing with that. If you're just trying to stay still, then it takes a toll on your body. So I wanted to show that, like, this is an amazing way that we have, like, to regulate our emotions, that honestly, I mean, I wish neurotypical people were able to benefit the same way. I mean, hopefully they can. Maybe they don't need to. I don't know. But I mean, everybody has anxiety nowadays. I mean, more and more, I mean, depression. And I truly believe that, well, even like meditation, um, mindfulness, stimming for me is mindfulness. When I meditate, a lot of times I find myself stimming, and I've just learned to go with it. And
Mhm,
it's made it so much more fulfilling for me to just, like, if I just focus on my heartbeat, for example,
mhm,
that's anxiety.
mhm.
If I focus on, let's say, the feeling of the air currents as I'm rocking or my fingers move, then it's something that I can celebrate. It's life that I can celebrate. It's a
Mm,
dance with life that I wanted to convey with the book. Um,
wow.
it's feeling completely immersed in all of your surroundings, good and bad, but then enjoying the good and the bad all the same.
Oh.
So yeah, celebration for sure.
I love that word dance, and I'm so sad. You might have to show your page, but when you said the dance, it reminded me of the particular page 30. It's of course the one page I haven't adapted yet, but it reminded me of that page, that kind of the dance that I felt like you were able to capture.
Um, well,
It's
there's different. Is it
no, this
30?
the this one
Oh,
here. Oh,
yes.
that one too. I mean, you
Yeah,
captured it in so
30.
many. Yeah, maybe this one.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's really
right
beautiful.
here.
Yeah, that just reminded me of the dance of that was
Yeah.
really wonderful.
Um, and like throughout the book, like for example, at the beginning, you can see that the textures are like flashing against the characters, that they're kind of sharp and pointy. And so that's what I hope to convey with the book is
Mm,
that the stimming is integrating all these external and internal experiences and kind of flowing with them instead of it being a struggle. It's something that you can,
mm,
immerse yourself in and enjoy if you're able to move, whether that's through physical or verbal means.
right. It's amazing.
I'm struck by just how vulnerable and how thank you for sharing so deeply, and also just the ways that clearly stimming and um, these story times, this inclusivity, it's really healing. And also when you were speaking, I was also struck by like the care for each person and making sure that their experience and their feelings and who they are is really taken care of as regard like as relates to literacy, but also just as a person. So thank you so much for sharing, for this conversation, and your both of your work. A free teacher's guide is available to download on the Flap Your Hands product page at leonlow.com. And you can learn more about Libraries for All at courtneywalker.org or on Instagram at libraries_for_all. And to keep in touch with what Steve is up to, you can check out Steve Asbell on Blue Sky or at his website, steveasbell.com. Thank you again for joining us and take care.